And we've been speaking a lot this morning about the confusion and contradictions over what is happening with the Strait of Hormuz. What is the mood there? What are people talking about? And what are European nations prepared to do?
Well, indeed, it is very fragile. The ceasefires in the Middle East are fragile, and also the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, now it's open, now it's closed. We don't know. So that is, I think, what people are discussing here as well, how to deal with this instability in the world. And from the European Union's point of view, I'm very much stressing the importance of cooperation and coordination and returning to the rules-based order where freedom of navigation is normal, where you don't threaten to attack civilian infrastructure, and where the people in the south of Lebanon are safe again. And I think it's very much top of mind, the situation in the Middle East, Iran, and broader.
Looking ahead to what we think will be possibly negotiations in Pakistan, again, between the U.S. and Iran on Monday, what is your take on the prospect of those talks happening at this point, based on people you've talked to and information you had, and the fruitfulness of those talks? You're a diplomat. You've been a diplomat for a long time. You know how much work usually goes into advancing these summits. That doesn't happen, and yet the U.S. seems, the president just spoke, and it seems like they're still bullish on there being a possibility of negotiations. What's your take on where that stands and whether or not a durable peace can be found?
Concretely, I do think we have been calling for de-escalation and for diplomacy. So it is very valuable that partners like Pakistan, but also Turkey, are actually trying to get the countries at a negotiating table. And we really sincerely hope that progress can be made. But also for Europe, this freedom of navigation and the Strait of Hormuz is very damaging to all the world. And we want to be part of the solution. So we will be happy. And there are several European countries who have expressed their willingness to support a mission in, keeping the Strait of Hormuz open, but it has to be done under the condition that there is a true ceasefire and that working towards a stable situation, and not just this situation that we're seeing this weekend, where you never know where you are.
I want to ask you more just about the fragility of that ceasefire, and it is a short one. I'm curious what you think needs to be in place for it to continue, and how optimistic you are indeed that this is going to last longer than 10 days.
Well, I think the whole world sees the necessity for this ceasefire. So in that way, everybody's pushing, I would say, in the same direction. At the same time, we have seen some very tough language coming from various sides, I would say. And we've also seen the consequences of the war in Iran, in the rest of the Middle East. So I'm very worried also about the ceasefire that was agreed between Israel and Lebanon at the coordination of the United States and President Trump. It all seems very fragile, and it all seems to be a day-to-day situation, whereas what we need is a much longer perspective and genuine diplomatic efforts that will lead to something that is actually sustainable. And unfortunately, I try to be an optimist, but unfortunately, we're seeing more unpredictability than stability right now.
How do you do that, though? Because those kinds of multilateral deals, talks, collaborations require a level of trust, which folks I've spoken to, and correct me if I'm wrong, say that trust is really frayed, especially between European nations and the president right now. Is there a way to get back to not even normal, but a starting point for those negotiations, or is that still going to take time?
Well, it does take time. I do believe that the European Union and the European countries are showing their support to, the international system itself, to peace, to stability, and we're seeing the interest that we all have. It's no different between the United States and the European Union, and also other countries in the world. We need stability in the world. Otherwise, people are going to suffer literally because of hunger, but also economically. It is harming all of us. So this moves in one direction. And I think the fact that the European Union is engaging and has put forward what it can do should be appreciated also by our American partners. And I sincerely hope that is the direction it's going to take. And of course, also it requires that countries in the Middle East also restrain themselves, that Israel restrains itself vis-a-vis their attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon, because Lebanon is suffering huge hugely, and that also in Iran there is a development towards this. They have to stop to suppress their own people, which is the cause of much of the trouble over there. So restraint, willingness, and regaining trust is, I think, what the European Union aims for.
I'd like to ask you just about the international community's ability to police these ceasefires. So you've brought up the conflict in Lebanon, Israel's incursion there, this very fragile ceasefire. We know there have been violations of ceasefires in the past. Given how upended the world is right now, how strange the circumstances are, is there a robust enough apparatus in place to police these ceasefires going forward?
First of all, the ceasefire is not holding, unfortunately. And in Lebanon, the level of destruction and displacement of people is really horrendous. But what I do feel is very important is that there is engagement, that there are actually talks going on between Lebanon and Israel. So that is encouraging, and that is really a big step. And the second thing is that we cannot expect Lebanon to deal with this all on its own. Lebanon is a relatively small country and a very fragile country. So to disarm Hezbollah and to reclaim the monopoly on weapons by the Lebanese government is their intention, but they need support.
Before we let you go, I do want to ask you about NATO and the U.S. You've been a former defense minister. You're very involved in NATO. Are you concerned about Article 5 and about this president defending Article 5? It's not that necessarily the U.S. could pull out of NATO. The president can't do that unilaterally. But are you concerned that the president could de facto pull out of NATO just by not funding it, not collaborating, and not working with the alliance? How worried are you? How worried are your colleagues about that?
Well, I do believe we are sincerely worried because NATO is not only about its capabilities, and we know that we as European countries need to do more. NATO is about deterrence, and deterrence is created by, the faith in all partners. If Article 5 were triggered, then every aggressor knows what will happen. If there is doubt about that in the hearts and minds of the aggressors, then we are in trouble. So I do believe that it's extremely important to continue to engage with the United States, to show that the European countries are willing to take on more responsibility in NATO. But the very fact that there are comments about NATO being a paper tiger is certainly not helpful and is not strengthening the NATO as an alliance at all.